Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the studio tonight. So tonight, in what I'm hoping is going to be a weekly live painting, I'm going to paint for you today a lighthouse, a couple of guys fishing over here. Let me just move my computer for just a second so I can only see one video stream. I hope that we're live. I hope we get a whole bunch of people in here with us tonight. But let me start as I do, or as I try to do all the time, by going through what I will be using. So let's start with the paper. Got a second book here. It's the same thing. I'm using 12 by 16 Pro Art 140-pound watercolor paper. It is wood pulp. It is not cotton watercolor paper. Nevertheless, it's decent paper. It's not great paper. It's a decent paper. It holds up very well. It'll hold a lot of water, and it's good for what we're doing. Here is the picture that I'm going to use. I have lightly drawn it onto the paper already, so we don't have to spend time doing that. The paints that I'm going to be using are in my palette, my limited palette here. Let me go through the colors. I've got cobalt blue, French ultramarine, cobalt green, hooker's green, Aurelian, cad yellow pale, alizarin crimson, quinacridone red, raw umber, burnt umber, Payne's gray, and neutral tint. If anybody is interested, they are by, oh, this is interesting. They are by Winsor Newton, M. Graham, Winsor Newton. Well, this one is Winsor Newton, M. Graham, M. Graham here, Winsor Newton, and this is by somebody who's neither of them. Dainayw Smith. There you go. I believe that is Dainayw Smith. Anyways, there are the colors that I'm going to be using. I'm going to set this off to the side a little bit. The brushes that I'm going to be using this evening. I'm going to try to do this so we can see both the picture that I'm painting and what I'm painting at the same time. The brushes that I'm going to be using this evening are the Dainayw Quill Mop brushes. I like them very much. These ones are all squirrel hair. I've been using these quite a bit, and I think they're fantastic. I really like these brushes. I have another set that they've made. They market it under Art Secret. I like these too, but I thought for what I'm going to do this time, I would use these Dainayw brushes. Here they are. What else can we talk about? I've got water up there. I've got towels everywhere. I think I'm ready to go. If you have any questions, shoot them off in the chat. It is just me here tonight. I'll probably have to stop for a second to answer the questions if you've got them, to look over and read it. So bear with me a little bit, and I don't know, let's get going. Let's see how it goes. I'm kind of curious myself. I'm going to start by pre-wetting some of this anyways. I'll probably go around most of my lighthouse here. I will say the one thing I normally forget to do is paint the sky through the glass of the lighthouse. I've painted a number of lighthouses before, and I bet on about half of them I forget to do that. And then I get done with the painting, and I got to go back and go, oh man, I forgot to do that, and that's really kind of a pain, but so be it. I remember it tonight. We'll go with it. That's probably far enough. By the time I get down here, that's going to be mostly dry anyways. Can I show the brushes a little closer? I don't know if you can see that. That's the Dainayw Squirrel Hair Brush. I bought these in a set on Amazon. There's the 3, and there's the 1. It came as a 1, a 3, and a 5, if you can see those. They came in a set on Amazon. and I want to say they were about $45, somewhere in that range. I don't remember exactly how much they were, but that's pretty close. Something like that. Okay, so anyways, let's get back to, I'm trying to figure out how much I paid for my brushes. Let's get back to this. This guy has a fair amount of pink in it. So I'm using my quinacridone red as some pink here, and the blue up in the top is just a little bit of cobalt blue up there. I'm just gonna drop this on and let it do its thing. It's gonna mix a little bit. I'll get some purples, I'll get some blues, I'll get all kinds of stuff going on in there. And I don't want to make it very dark. That's plenty dark for me. I'm gonna continue to wet this right on down. I'm going to stay mostly away from my Lighthouse. If I get a little bit on the Lighthouse, I'm not going to worry about it too much, but I'm looking at my image here, and there's quite a bit of this pinkish color reflected on the water, so I want to make sure I get that on there. That's a good one that I would normally, I'd look at it and I'd just go, oh, yep, there it is, and then kind of look away and be done with it and forget until the end. Oh, there is a lot of pink in that water. There you go. That's about all I want to do. That water's pretty light too. And if we look at our picture, here we go. It's really light here. Then there's a band of a little bit darker, and then our water's really light, which is really going to set off the base of this lighthouse for us. Let's see, what do I want to do before we keep going? I'm still working with my big brush, this is number 5 brush here, and I'm going to mix up a little bit of neutral tint. I'll do this here. Neutral tint. There we go. A nice bit of that. And I'm going to mix that with some of this quinacridone red. We get a nice pinky dark color. And not that I want this whole thing to be pink, but there is a lot of this that has pink tone to it. And I don't want to lose too much of that. And I kind of forgot. I'm just going to dab some of this up. I kind of forgot I'm not painting on an incline today. Oh, man. And so my colors are going to run in every direction instead of just down. It's going to make it a little tougher. But we'll figure this out. I got a little drop right there, if you can see. That's okay. It's going to make it a little tougher. We'll figure this out while I've got this color going on here. I'm just going to drop in right on top of this color a little bit of raw umber in there to break that color up, give it some more interest. Okay, now my sky's getting better up there. It's getting nice and dry. I'm going to drop down one brush, and now I want to look at my lighthouse. And in contrast to the background, now, the lighthouse, while it does have some pink in it, it's got a lot of blue in it. So I'm going to mix up a nice puddle of blue. Here we go. I'm just going to stick with cobalt blue. I could go with ultramarine. Everybody uses ultramarine for everything. I'm going to go with cobalt blue here. Just get a nice puddle worth of that going. And I'm going to use this as my primary color on here. Let's see, here we go. How dark is this going to be? Is that too much? That's probably not too bad. I'm going to paint this on. Let's see. I'm trying to be a little careful. I don't need to be too careful up here. If it blends a little bit into the sky, I'm okay with that. And I have a little bit of forgiveness area on the bottom down here because down here, well, not that far, down here is where it's the darkest, and it's going to be almost not black down there, but it's going to be pretty dark down there because it's inside that bell. So there we go. I'm going to start with my lighthouse like that. I'll do the same thing here. And I'm going to try to watch that and see how how dry that is getting. Because before it dries out all of the way up here, I'm going to go back and I'm going to drop in a few spots of burnt umber. And that's going to kind of be my rust down there. See, I can make that a little stronger on here. All right, and I've got some of this pink reflected. It's not pink, it's quinacridone red. Quinacridone red. I've got it in my palette, and I don't use it all that much, which begs the question, why do I have it in my palette? I love the color. It's a nice, really hot red, pinkish color. It's fantastic. I don't have enough opportunities to use it. I normally will end up mixing it with something. All right, I've just dropped down to the next brush size. This is a 1. I'm going to mix up burnt umber here just a little bit. We don't need all that much. And I know there's some spots of rust up here, a few up here. So wherever I think there's going to be a little bit of rust, while that's still wet and it's still able to mix and come down and, you know, really get together with all those other colors, I want to make sure I get some of that on here. All right, I think that's good. I think that's good for now. Now, before I go too far, what I want to do is put in a background pretty light. For this, I am going to use ultramarine and just a touch of my, what is this, Hooker's green, just to give it kind of tree-ish feeling. Tree-ish feeling. That's such a funny way to say it. And I don't need this too precise back here. This is just a background. It's going to go on. I do need to change the angle of my paper. At this point, I do not want to go into my lighthouse. And I do want to have a flat horizon line. It's easier if I'm just pulling that right towards me. I'm going to do the same thing on this side, and I apologize for having to turn this page. That tree line can go and do what it wants. What I want is to make sure that I've got a nice straight horizon line. And yes, I did just paint right through these guys that were standing there, because there we go, nice, there we go. That's going to fade off into the background. I'm going to put another little layer of trees in the front here just to make those look like they're way back, and then another one a little bit more forward. I was going to say something here. Oh, I painted right over these guys because they're going to be darker than the background, and it shouldn't matter that I paint over top of them. They should be fine there. What I do need to do at this point, or what I want to do, is come back into this area in here, and I'm going to stick with, what do I have? I have the number 1 brush. I'm going to stick with some of this neutral tint. I'm going to mix a little bit of burnt umber in with it. I hope you guys can see that. There we go. It's getting a little darker. It's still not super dark, but it's getting darker. And I want to paint, how are we looking? Yep, that's a good amount. I'm going to paint the sides of the rocks here. The inside sides, the sides facing us, the sides that in theory should be in shadow. Right, where's my bottom line? Is right about there. There we go. If you want to vary your shadow color, make it a little warmer or a little cooler as you're painting it on. I know it's not really shadow color, but you can drop in. You could drop in a little blue in here if you wanted to. Right in there. It would just change that color just enough that when it dries, the viewer's eyes are going to look at that and go, oh, there's a little bit of interest there. If you're doing it right now and looking at it, you probably can't tell sometimes that there's a lot of variation in color there, but when it dries, you'll really be able to tell that it's different. I mean, if you wanted to stick with gray, you could do Payne's gray in here. You could do, you know, higher concentration of neutral tint. There's lots of stuff you could do. There we go. And now all of a sudden we haven't done a whole lot, and we've framed this whole area. So now it does look like these guys are standing up on something. It does look a little funny. I kind of drew that odd. That's all right. We'll deal with it. All right. I want to come back up to my lighthouse here and take a look at what we've got. I'm going to make a darkish, bluish, purplish color. All right. In fact, maybe I should throw another couple of colors in there. So the question, I have a question. I just looked over, and the question is, why use a floppy quill brush? Why not just use a round brush? That's a great question. Let me get a round brush out. And let me get it wet so we can see both. This quill brush really isn't that floppy. Let's see. Let me do it on top of this. Let me set that to the side for a second. The quill brush that I'm using, right, I can push it, and it springs back almost all the way. And actually, if I use, this is a Kolinsky Sable round brush. If I push it, it's going to spring back about the same amount. There's not a whole lot of difference in these two. I will admit that I like the way this looks in my hand a little better. It doesn't make me paint any better with it, but I like using it a little better. The other thing is that it holds a ton of water. I think that this, being about the same size, this is a 1 and this is a 5, and the sizes are roughly the same. I would bet you that this would hold twice the amount of water as this. And I could, if I wanted to, now I go back to my water and dip, and I have a towel here that I dap off with all the time, but I'll bet you I could just, at the beginning of the painting, go into my water, get some colors, put them on, get some colors, put them on, get some colors, put them on, and I could do a lot without ever having to go back into the water to rinse my brush. And I don't know that I can always get that with the sable brush. The sable brush, the round, does sometimes come to a better point, but with a lot of these quill brushes, they're going to come to a pretty good point too. This one, it's the other brush I have, another quill brush, comes to a really fine point. I think the only ones I have that don't come to a super fine point are my Princeton Neptune ones, and they're quite a bit bigger. But this one I let dry on the side. I actually brushed it out of the pan like this and let it dry like that to see if I could get it flat to make different textures with. But even so, it'll come to a nice point too. So the real answer is, it's just a preference. I like the way this one feels and the way this one looks, and I know that it will hold a ton of water. When I enjoy my tools, I do paint better. I hope I paint better. Okay, I think I paint better. I enjoy it more. Well, I enjoy it more whether I actually paint better or not. What was I doing? I was going to paint some shadows on up here. Let's do this. So here's my puddle of, right now it's neutral tint and a little bit of the quinacridone red and a little bit of ultramarine to kind of purple it down even more. So I'm going to use that as my shadow color in here, a dark shadow up here. And so I've got to be a little careful because I've still got some wet here. And and now I'm all self-conscious about the size of this brush and how it's going to work for me. But I really do. I was a little dubious, I will admit, when I bought these brushes to begin with, that I'd be able to paint with them. And it has been a bit of a struggle. There is a bit of a learning curve with these mop brushes. But the more I paint with them, the more I kind of find that there's a lot you can do with these. And I'm trying to get out of, how do I say it? I'm trying to get out of painting realist paintings. I want to be more impressionistic, and I feel like there's an element of this brush that I can't control, and that makes me feel as though I'm painting a bit more impressionistic. Like I've got to go with what it's doing rather than just grabbing the round brush and painting exactly what I see, exactly how I see it. I don't know if that explains it or not. Let's just say I really like the brush, so that's why I use them. All right, let's get back to some actual painting here instead of me just rambling on, which I actually do quite a bit. There we go, the spire on top of this. I think I need to add a little bit of color up here. I should have put the color on before I did that. It's not quite dark enough for me. Before we go too much further, let's do that. This was a bit of cobalt blue over here. We're just going to add a little bit more on this side. Could actually even make that a little bit darker over here. If I've got a little bit on that side, I want to have a little bit on this side. Actually, I think I like that, just about like that. I'm not going to put in the rest of this. I do want this side over here to be quite a bit darker than the other side, or not darker, more shadow-ish. So I think I'm going to continue that down here. Put some color on, and I've done it. Put my hand exactly where I said I didn't want to put my hand. Now this is where I think this brush lets me do things differently. And yes, I know that I could do this with a round brush. I totally could. But I don't, for whatever reason. I just don't. I could absolutely paint this just like this with a round brush. For whatever reason, it will never happen for me. All right, I do have a little bit here that's going to puddle. I want to pull some of that up. Don't want a puddle. There we go. It looks a bit of a mess. We're going to clean that up. There we go. We need to have a little bit of a line. There should be a counter shadow, a little tiny one on this side. It's not a shadow. Shadow's the wrong word. I don't know what word I'm looking for tonight. Anybody else have nights where they can't speak very well? I mean, for me, that's like most days. That's okay. So what's my door look like? Oh, my door looks like a mess here. Let's get some nice... We can even go a little bit darker down here if we want to. There we go. I think I'm happy with that. By the time I get a little bit of shadow color underneath this right up here, which I'm going to put on right now. You have nights when you can't paint well. Holy cow. Every night seems like it's a fight. Not every night. Every night, some night. How does that sound? Every night, some night. It's just, it's an enjoyable hobby. I try to win people over to painting watercolors because I enjoy it so much. It's so much fun, even on the nights when things don't go your way. When you wish your paints would react. Now this is one of the problems I do have with this brush. The belly of this is bigger than I would paint with others, and so I get a little sloppy sometimes. I'm a little nervous, and so my paint brush touches down in weird spots. But not to be daunted. We'll just paint right on over that. Some nights are better than others. There we go. So now I've got a nice dark shadow. When I go and put this line in on top, I think that's going to look a bit better. I'm just going to take a little bit off of that one. I don't like that quite so hard of an edge, and I kind of forgot to do this up here. Good, 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 good. Okay. Where am I at? I need to stop and think. I'm going to put a little bit more here. I said that just a little bit more green in there. There we go. I said that I've got a second layer in here of trees on my background. I want to add that in just for a little bit of added depth over there. So I've mixed that up, and it looks like it's dry enough at this point. I can drop that in right down to the water line. I like this. And this can be, I don't actually have this drawn in. I can make this as big as I want or as small as I want, provided it goes, you know, the entire way across, just to give a little bit, like I said, just to give a little bit more depth to what's on that side. There we go. Something like that. Doesn't need to be perfect. There's no right, there's no wrong. There it is. So Christina, I hope your nights where you don't paint well are not like my nights when I don't paint well. I hope yours are few and far between. Mine are, I don't know, painting's funny. I'll paint so that I think I'm doing well every night for a week, 2 weeks. And I'll go, wow, this is great. And then I'll forget everything I knew. I'll just absolutely forget how to paint, and it'll take me a while to figure it out, as we always do. But it's, I don't know, I don't know what that phenomenon is. I really wish I knew. It's so funny. Okay, so I'm like the general shape of this. I do need to do some more detailed work. That's got to dry a little bit. I think I can do some up here. I'm going to attempt to be, oh, you know what I need to do before I do anything else? Let me do this. I've got a nice light up here that I need to put in. I'm not going to make it quite as bright as they've got it in here. There we go. And now I'm going to attempt to put in some lines with using my #1 brush here. And I'm going to come back into some neutral tint. Does anybody else use neutral tint? Anybody who's watching? I just started with neutral tint. I follow, I'll give him a plug. I follow Tim Wilmot on YouTube, on YouTube. If anybody has watched him, he has a really interesting painting style. And he uses a lot of neutral tint. And I was like, well, I got to see what neutral tint is. How different is that from, let's say, Payne's Gray? I went, can't be too much different. And I got it, and it's very much like Payne's Gray, only it's purpley-er. It's much more purple-ish. It's such an interesting color. I probably have seen it 100 times, and I wouldn't necessarily have tried it on my own. Because why would I? I had Payne's Gray. Never needed it. And so now I've kind of worked it into, I need to turn this a little bit. This is still wet down here, so I need to turn this just a little bit. So I've now kind of worked that into part of my paintings. Let's see, I've got these big cross braces. I'm just going to give a little bit of indication of these. Something like that. So it looks like you guys use it more than I do. Oh, you use it right for shadows. Oh, that's interesting. I never really thought of that. I haven't done it just for shadows. That probably would be a nice shadow color. I grew up. When I started painting, I always thought, you know, you watch a couple of videos and people go, oh, shadows are, yeah, you just throw on some ultramarine blue and that's what shadow color is. And I threw on some ultramarine blue. You know, well, that doesn't look like a good shadow. That's terrible. I don't know what to do. And I started making my shadows purple. You know, almost the same color, just a bit warmer. And I went, oh, immediately, oh, that's such a better color to make the shadows. It's purple, but neutral tint is kind of purplish. Like I said, it's nice. That might be a good substitute. I might have to steal that from you guys. Oh, I did it again. I'm learning just as much as you guys are, which is always what happens. All right, I put this blue line up here. I need something to denote the top of this, but I was going to make this railing in this neutral tint kind of quinacridone red color, and I don't know if I could put a blue railing there and have it work. Or I mean a neutral tint railing there and have it work. So now I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do with that. Drop in this door here. This door is kind of more of a window, I would say, than a door. I'm going to do, let's see, something underneath. I'm going to go back and put a little bit more of this, a little rust there. What did you say? It's nice to use when you do some mixing and it folds in fabric. Oh, folds in fabric. Interesting. I might have to steal that one too. I'm just playing with this, trying to get a nice bit of rust to come off of this. And I'm going to put a little bit of this burnt sienna up in that window to warm that up a little bit. I don't think I'm doing too badly with my big old brush here, drawing some lines with it. Here we go. I just want to outline that a little bit. I don't want to do too much with it. I'm going to move down to my door down here. All right. How am I doing with reading comments and answering comments and painting at the same time? I've got a friend who told me I'm nuts to even try. I didn't think it would be that bad. I think it's going okay. You guys tell me. Let's see, this is really dark, but it's kind of it's more of a rusty dark up there. I'm gonna do this right in that old door there. And what do I want to do? I got a couple of things here. I'm going to put some lines out here just to give this area some interest. Make some warm lines out here also. Some dots. Some areas where this is kind of gotten worn and people walked on it. Just all marked up a little bit. We need to add some interest to this foreground here. I'm going to make a few marks up here also. It can be warmer or cooler. Sometimes a combination of both helps. Doing great. Wow. Unbelievable. Sometimes I don't know. I wanted to try doing a live video this way, I should say, because I've got a little portable camera that I use to film my videos normally. It goes off after a half an hour, and the battery in it will last maybe 2 sessions, maybe 2 sessions. And I seem to always forget to recharge it, but I thought, well, if I can just do a video online, it's going to stream right to YouTube. All I have to do is be able to stay coherent for however long it takes me to paint my painting, which I realize is kind of hard sometimes. But then I don't have to worry about the camera going off, and I don't have to feel rushed, although I do still feel a little rushed, but I can just kind of enjoy the painting, and hopefully anybody who's watching can enjoy it with me. And so that's why I'm trying to do this way. Hopefully it's working out. I hope you enjoy it. How many years of practice did it take to reach this level of expertise? So that's funny. I met the person who is now my wife a number of years ago. I don't know how many, many. And when I met her, I would be doing little tiny watercolor paintings, like, you know, like 2 inches by 2 inches, and just little things like 1 chili pepper and 1 apple, a leaf, just really small, just as a way to basically break away from the everyday rat race, something that would force me to disengage from the electric world. And I never thought anything about it. It was just something I kind of did. And I met my wife, and she and I were walking at a street fair, a craft fair, at one point in time, and we walked past a few watercolor booths, and I said, I can do that, and oh yeah, no big deal, I can do that. And finally she got tired of me saying it and said, look, either shut up or put up. You keep saying you can do it. I don't want to hear about it anymore. And I went, okay, fine. So I kind of got serious about it, and I would take my paints to work and paint on my lunch hour at work. And that was about 10 years ago. And so I would have 1 hour of practice a day, almost exactly 1 hour of practice a day. You know what? I was going to put a line right here. I don't think I'm going to do that. I'd get 1 hour of practice a day, and I did that for, I probably did that for 6 years or so. Just the 1 hour of practice every day on my lunch hour. My office was filled up with all these tiny little paintings that I did on my lunch hour. And the students, I worked at a university, students would come in and they would say, oh, these are nice, these are nice. You know, do you sell anything? Do you teach? Do you whatever? You know, all the questions. And I went, well, you know, people are asking me about these. These are kind of nice. I love doing them. Maybe I should start to, you know, see about teaching class or doing whatever. And my wife again said, well, you know, you don't know anything about teaching classes. Why don't you do some on YouTube? And so, I don't know what 3 years ago, I started doing this on YouTube and switched from doing things in my office to here, what I'm calling my studio, which is the back of my garage. And so I come out at this point and I still paint for about an hour every day. Sometimes I will just do a small little bit like this, which is not much. Sometimes I'll do a painting for, you know, this, which is probably an hour or so. I'll set up different practice sessions for myself. This was an interesting one. I did colors this way on all of them, down on all of them. So darker to lighter, lighter to darker on all of them. Tried different things, different brushes. I don't know. So I tried different things. I don't know if that answers your question. The long and the short is, I think I've been doing this for, I don't know, 10 or 12 years, but only for about an hour a day or so. Not a lot. I hope that answers your question. I think that answers your question. If it doesn't answer your question, just tell me it doesn't answer my question, and I'll try to answer it a different way. While I'm doing that, I'm trying to think how I want to do this, and I think I'm going to need to get a rigger brush. This is the only rigger I have. I've got a rigger here. Oh, I've split the paint on it. This is a Kronbacher Academy. What number is this? Number 2. And I think I'm going to use this to draw these bars on. And I'm going to mix a little purple, which is my quinacridone red, and I'm going to use ultramarine blue. I want it to be, I should probably use cobalt, shouldn't I? Since I've been using it. So I'll do that cobalt and quinacridone red. It does make a little bit of a different blue. So I'll do that. Who are my favorite artists? My favorite artists. Well, I would be remiss, given that I'm such a watercolor fan, I would be remiss if I didn't say John Singer Sargent, whose stuff is absolutely lights out phenomenal. His stuff is just, he's got an economy of brush strokes, but he puts so much into each one. It's unbelievable. Turner probably equally as well. Just so good with what he does. Knows the medium, obviously, inside and out. I'm not super stoked about that. I'm going to let it be because I don't want to go back in and try and mess with this and ruin something, but I'm not wild about that. I really should have thought about how to do these. The color's so close on here. It's a little different. I don't know, those are the two big ones that I really like. YF, I don't, honestly, I don't know who that is. I say I'm not a classically trained artist by any stretch. Like I said, everything I've done, I've kind of done on my own. So I don't really, I'm not in the know necessarily about all the artists like a lot of people would be. And I don't live in a metropolitan area to get to go to a whole bunch of museums to see all the stuff. That's not an excuse for anything. That's just kind of how it is. And I've got two kids. So not long after I started doing watercolor, actually before I started doing watercolors in earnest, I had a couple of kids, and that took up a lot of my time. So I don't spend a whole lot of time looking at other people's art. There we go. Two guys fishing on there. I'm going to leave it like this. Andrew Wyeth. I'll tell you what, I am going to look him up and see what he's all about. And I might have to add him to my list. There he goes. This guy's got some shoes. But before we do anything else with this and mess up anything I've done, I'm going to call this one done. I hope you guys had a good time painting with me. I had a great time with you guys here. I'm going to sign my painting. Thank you so much for joining me in the studio. I'm going to be back here next Saturday night at 8 o'clock doing a little after dark painting. Hope you guys can all join me then. Until then, thanks for being here. We'll see you later. Thanks. Bye-bye.